Another bump in the road for the government's controversial asset sales. This time it's Maori claims over water rights. The week saw an urgent Waitangi Tribunal hearing into the matter. But the Prime Minister stirred things up by saying the government can ignore the Tribunal's outcome, meaning any decision wouldn't affect the sale of Mighty River Power. John Key's attitude towards the Tribunal has left many Maori furious. Hone Harawira called it corrosive, and it's left the Maori Party's relationship with National in jeopardy. Former Maori Party MP, now Mana leader, Hone Harawira joins us now. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Corin.
Do you think the Maori Party should walk now?
I think the Maori Party should have walked over the Marina Coastal Area Bill. They should walk over this. They didn't then, they won't now. But
it's a reasonable position for them to take. There's a number of hurdles still to come. There's the Tribunal's findings to come back. There's potential court action. They need to work through this, don't they?
Who's this, the Maori Party or the government?
Maori Party.
Look, you can't talk about the Prime Minister's comments as being corrosive and insulting and inflaming and then stay at the table. Hey, you've got to make a decision that this is exactly what Helen Clark said about the foreshore and seabed. If our Prime Minister is saying this about water, should we be doing what we did then? And the answer is yes, they should.
But Helen Clark legislated. She took away a right from Māori. That hasn't been done yet.
Not yet, no. But clearly...
So why walk away before we get to that point?
Well, because at the end of the day, that's exactly where John Key is heading. I mean, he's right to say that it's non-binding and he can ignore it. But in the same way, Helen Clark also ignored the opportunity for the High Court to rule, and she brought in legislation. John Key can do exactly the same thing, and chances are he will. If the Maori Council gets a good ruling from the tribunal, takes it to the High Court, gets a positive ruling there, I have no doubt that John Key will legislate to take control of the water.
The Maori Party's got a relationship here. Why not stay inside the tent, work at them, trying to make sure that Maori get the best they can get from within inside the tent?
You've been at the news desk for the last 2 or 3 years, Corin. You tell me, their flagship policy is whānau ora. What's the one success they've had with whānau ora?
Well, they're getting money out into community groups and giving, presumably, low-income Māori New Zealanders the support they need.
Tariana budgeted that at $1 billion and they've got 134 million, 13.4%. That's no success. It's been an absolute failure in terms of what it was that they aimed to achieve. But in terms of what's been the success of whānau ora, I doubt that any commentator could tell me. So if you're at the table to achieve those gains, you've got to ask yourself, what are those gains? And if they're not there, and you're continuing to be insulted, then it's time to move.
All right, I want to ask you about John Key's comments. Do you think he was being deliberate with his comments, or was he sloppy, was he just didn't think it through?
Don't really care what was his state of mind.
No, but it matters though, because if he was deliberate...
But what matters is how the rest of New Zealand sees it. Now, by insulting the judicial process and insulting the commitment that Māori have made to that process, he's also sending a signal, get used to this, New Zealand, because if this goes to the High Court, I'm likely to insult you guys as well.
How exactly did he insult the process? He stated what has happened in the past.
It's also true that in the past, governments legislate over the top of the High Court. But do you hear him ever insulting the High Court by saying, that's also non-binding because we can legislate against that as well?
And they do, and governments do legislate.
Yes, they do. But does he ever insult the High Court by saying so?
How did he insult the tribunal, though?
Has he ever said that about the High Court? The answer is no. He's attacked the tribunal because it seemed to be a Māori thing and because he doesn't particularly care for the Māori vote anyway. And by him saying things like, well, I've insulted the tribunal, but guess what? I'm totally sure, I'm totally positive that this is not going to upset my relationship with the Maori Party. He already knows that they're going to stay at the table. I put down $100, they stay.
All right. What's your sense on the feeling within Maoridom about this? Are you sensing that there's going to be hikois heading for Parliament on this? Is there the same level of outrage as there was over the foreshore and seabed?
I think the difference between the foreshore and seabed and this one here is that water and the state asset sales are issues that affect all New Zealanders in exactly the same way. The majority of us don't support it. And so I think that what's happening is that John Key is going to see more and more New Zealanders come on board. I mean, you're seeing a lot of first-time protesters, you're seeing marches, big marches, turning into rolling protests. We are also seeing, well, I'm getting emails from Pākehās that I've never met before, wishing us well in this fight against the asset sale.
Okay, so the asset sale is one fight, but why are we having the scrap over water ownership now? I mean, this could have happened. You could have gone to the tribunal presumably a long time ago.
Yeah, I think Māori and Tu Whare has made the position, as have a number of the claimants in the tribunal hearing, that as long as that water is available for the benefit of all New Zealanders, you know, we're comfortable working slowly through the process to establish that principle of kaitiakitanga, rangatiratanga and mana.
Could I ask you
But the minute that government says we're going to use that and we're going to sell shares in the future of the use of that water on the open market, then that really hurts all of New Zealand.
And it's an excellent point. Tūwhare Toa, you could argue, have a pretty good claim. They own a lake which stores the water, which gets used for Mighty River Power to generate electricity. That could be a good claim which can go through a separate process. Why do we need to be having a discussion now about who owns water in general, which is a very hard concept to get your head around?
I think that's because...
Is it rights or ownership of water? What is it?
The Maori Council's claim is quite simple, that the Maori interest in water has yet to be settled. This is not an ownership claim. It's about recognition of kaitiakitanga and the principle of guardianship over resources that have been part and parcel of our history since we first got here. Every Maori you talk to will identify themselves by their marae, by their mountain, by their river. That is how much water is important to Maori. If we don't settle that interest, those issues will be ongoing. And I'm glad, because I think that Maori have the opportunity here to use the treaty to provide a lead for all New Zealanders in stopping the sale of assets that nobody wants.
Hone Harawira, thank you very much for your time, Mana Party leader.